Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, and good Sabbath to you all. This is Bill Bullock, coming to you live from the Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, USA. We have a beautiful rainy day here in Texas, in the region where we live, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to come into your homes, into your cars, into your computer screens, wherever I may find you, into your radios even, wherever I may find you this day, to share a little of the precious gift of Sabbath with you, a gift of sweet communion with the Creator of the universe, a recentering to His identity, to His persona, to His goodness, to His beauty, to His majesty, to His will, and sharing a little bit of that with one another. Shabbat Shalom to you all. Well, this week we are continuing our series of Torah studies. We are continuing with this particular year's title, which is Walking in the Light. And our theme is Walking in the Light, Discovering the Secret Wisdom Encoded in Torah's Timeless Stories. And so that's where we'll be starting. This is the 8th week of our time together on this particular theme. If we're going to be discovering the hidden wisdom from walking in the light, we need to understand what light is. So I'll take just a moment. We haven't talked about it lately. What is this light we're talking about? If we're walking in the light, we need to know what light we're walking in. What is the light? It is the emanation of the Creator's countenance. I will refer you to what's called the Sabbath Psalm, Psalm 89. Beginning at about 1/3 of the way into that Psalm, 89:15, we have a very familiar verse. Most of the people in English know it is, "Blessed are those who know the joyful sound. They walk in the light of your countenance." Remember, we're discussing what light is. And so let's go and let's take that verse, 89 of Psalms, verse 15. And begin to take a more look at it. Ashrei ha'am is the way it starts in the original Hebrew that it was written in. Ashrei ha'am, blessed, going straight and forward, and therefore happy and grounded and based are the people who yodei teruah, who know intimately by experience and by encounter the teruah, the 9 staccato calls of the shofar, the call to attention and action. They walk, O Holy One, ba'or panecha, in the light of your face, in the light of your countenance. So what is this light we're talking about? The Sabbath Psalm tells us in verse 15. They walk ba'or panecha. There's really 2 elements of it. Before we get to ba'or panecha, the light of your face, the light of your countenance, and it's the Creator's own persona and His own presence. Before we get to that, we hear Ashrei ha'am yodei teruah. Blessed are those who know, understand the sound. It's called the joyful sound in English, but it's just one word, teruah. And this is the same sound that's called the 9 staccato sounds of the shofar, which are designed to call from the heavenlies, the host of heaven call to the attention of man and call man into action, or out of dormancy into action. Blessed are those who know the teruah, and they are the ones who walk ba'or panecha, in the light of your countenance. So take a moment to get that picture in your minds, my beautiful friends and family, my fellow travelers in this journey. That picture of the teruah, hearing and knowing the teruah, and therefore, because we have heard and know the teruah and the sound of the call to action of the Creator, and the call to attention and focus of the Creator, therefore we can walk in the light of His face, in the light, shining light of His countenance. Take a moment to get that picture in your minds. This is why we do this. This is why we do what we do every Sabbath. This is why I come to you through the camera, through the internet, and visit with you for a little while every Sabbath, that you may first of all hear the joyful sound, Yodei Teruah, know intimately the sound, the staccato, the call to action, intention by the Creator. And then secondly, that you may then, by virtue of hearing that call, responding to the teruah, walk or paneka, in the light of his countenance, your countenance, the Holy One. So that's why I'm talking to you right now. That's why you're listening to me right now. That you might be reconnected to the teruah and to Ba'or Panecha. Through this medium right now, I'm speaking to you because you can, beloved, my beloved fellow travelers, you can know the sound. You can know the teruah. You can hear it. You can feel it in your bones. You can feel it in your spirit, in your neshama. And you can, as you hear the sound, respond to the sound of the teruah. You can walk in the light. And that's what we're doing this year. We're focusing on walking in the light. Why is that so important to us? Why is this walking in the light that we're talking about so important? Well, if you want to know, I'm going to give you something to read. If you want to pause this video right now and go read it, you can do that. If you want to wait until it's over, just don't forget. Because if you want to know why this is so important to us, why I do this every week to come to you and speak to you, and why you feel drawn, hopefully, to listen and to pay attention, to tune in, and maybe even respond. Why is this so important to us? Well, read the rest of the psalm. Start with 89, verse 15, and read all the way through 89:52. That's about 2/3 of the psalm remaining, and it will give you the full picture of what this walking in the light becomes all about and what the ramifications of it will be for the world as well as for us. So stop the video now if you wish to, and let your soul digest what the psalmist has to say about those who know the teruah and those who walk in the light of the Creator's countenance and face. Now, I presume if you've paused your video, you're back. And if you didn't pause your video, you're still like, what is he talking about? Let me go a little further. The three approved means by which the light that I'm talking about is to be received by human beings are, number one, the sound and substance of the Creator's voice. He truly speaks, and his words have power and energy that creates the sound and substance of the Creator's voice. It's even more powerful than his words, and his words are the second most powerful thing next to his voice. The sound and substance of his voice, we're supposed to be receive light through being on the receiving end of the sound and substance of the Creator's voice. And that reminds us of the transformative power of divine encounter. Divine apprehension, I like to call it, when the Holy One speaks directly into our lives and we hear his voice, and our molecules, our DNA strands, we begin to respond and line up with what he just said, the power, the energy that's in his voice and in his words. So number one, approved means by which the light is to be received and appropriated by human beings is through the sound and substance of the Creator's voice in connection with transformative divine encounters. We've seen it, we've read about it recently through stories of Avraham and Yaakov and Yitzhak, and before that Noah and Cain and Adam and Hava. But let's go on. The second approved means by which the light of this countenance is to be received by human beings is the wisdom and timeless stories of his Torah and his Nevi'im, the prophets, the Torah and the prophets, the law and the prophets. This is the methodology by which he has encoded his power, the energy of his light, into actual written words and stories that he's telling us. The storyteller is telling us here. So the wisdom and timeless stories of the Torah and the Nevi'im have an energy to them that no other stories and no other prophets' prophetic words have. These allow us to align with the Creator of the universe's energy and to walk with him consistently, day after day, through trials and tribulations and through good times, in covenant disciplines with scheduled maintenance, service, upgrades, and updates. Schedules, maintenance, service, upgrades, and updates consistently, walking in covenant. This is why we do and how we learn, are introduced to through the wisdom and the timeless stories of the Torah and the Nevi'im, the prophets. That's two of the three approved means by which the light is to be received by human beings. I'm going to take you on an adventure. We're going to go into the third. The third approved means by which the light is to be received by human beings. Not exclusive to the others, but in addition to the others. In addition to the sound and substance of the Creator's voice, as he says Yehi Or and Lech Lecha and all the other Hebrew phrases that he utters that have this divine energy of encounter in them. And beyond the stories, the timeless stories of Torah and the speakings of the Nevi'im of the Scripture, beyond that is, number 3, the teaching and the modeling and the corrective disciplines of the Mashiach, of Messiah. This is the culmination, the third level. It's not one to replace the other two. It's one to supplement and add to and bring fullness to the other two. So the teaching, the modeling, the corrective disciplines of the Mashiach. And there are 2 seasons in this part of it. And we're beginning to, this is the 8th Parsha, and the 8th is the number of Mashiach and new beginnings. So that's why I'm taking a few moments of our time together to discuss with you that everything we do is going to be culminating in Mashiach, taking the things that we're learning, applying them in the highest possible level. And there are 2 levels of that, 2 levels of teaching, modeling, correction by Mashiach. The first level is the season of Yosefian discipline, being like Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef, he's called. The one who is a suffering servant, the one who is who offers us a more excellent way, but the most of the world is too immature to receive it. The offer of the more excellent way comes through the season of Yosefian discipline. That's the first element of who Mashiach is. He comes as Mashiach ben Yosef, the suffering servant, willing for a higher purpose and a higher reason to suffer whatever the world may throw at him, whatever people may throw at him, in order for the will of the Holy One to be done, and the kingdom of heaven to come. In the second season, after the season of Yosefian discipline, whenever it has run its course and everyone has made their decision as to whether they will or will not adopt the more excellent way and take the offer of the kingdom, it comes the season of Davidian rule, when Mashiach ben David arises. It's the same Mashiach. He just comes in the ways of David, of the kingdom. He returns with the unifying force of the Hebrew language to the earth and to the nations, and the grand vision for redemption and restoration of mankind as a species and the creation as an ecosystem to all the peoples, and offers the return to Eden, not just the exercise of the more excellent way. These are the ways of the light is to be received by human beings. May you walk in all 3 levels of the light. And may all 3 levels of light begin to awaken your neshama, your God-breathed eternal spirit, and may you begin to flow in his will and his ways. Do his work. Okay, it's a lot. But let's go forward. The annual cycle of Torah revelation that we're in, our light source, level 2 light source, is in its 8th week. Our script for this particular leg of the great journey, the parsha we'll study today, is Vayishlach, and he sent out and he sent forth. That's found at Genesis chapter 32, verse 3 through Genesis 36, verse 43. Parts of 5 chapters there. Now, the sages of Israel have historically called this section of Torah Vayishlach. Then he sent forth, he sent out, he dispatched. This is the parsha of Torah in which Yaakov is our focus. He is the covenant seed we're watching his adventures. And Yaakov is going to encounter, and he's going to confront, and he's going to ultimately transcend his greatest fear, the vengeance lust of his brother Esau. It will be in the course of this intense battle with the fear of man that Yaakov is going to take on his highest level. As we talk about the Torah being the introduction to Mashiach ben Yosef, and the Mashiach ben Yosef in the more excellent way offer being the introduction to Mashiach ben David and the kingdom factor, so it is with regard to Yaakov. It will be in the course of this intense battle with the fear of man that Yaakov is going to take on a higher calling, a new, fresh identity. He will mature from Yaakov into Yisrael. Get a name change, but it will be an identity shift and a sense of awareness of who he is. So, as we talk about Yaakov this week, as we talk about his elevation from Yaakov and his fleshly nature to Yisrael and his spiritual potential, the same question may be asked of each of us, because we're reliving these stories. These are our stories. So, let's turn the attention to you What higher calling and identity, fresh identity, has the Holy One ordained for you, beloved, to embrace this week? What is he calling you to be? What is he calling you to do? What is he calling you to know? What is he calling you to emanate of his presence into the world, of his character, his nature into the world? What message is he sending you forth with? Second question, after what higher calling and identity has he ordained for you to embrace is, but what obstacle course of fears and intimidations will you have to encounter and navigate and confront head on if necessary, and ultimately transcend if you're going to start functioning in this new higher role in the service of the King and the species and the planet that he has ordained for you, your higher calling and identity? What will be your obstacle course of fears to navigate and overcome? The third question for this week, who and what do you find yourself fearing more than you love the Creator, more than you love your fellow man, more than you love the parts of the earth ecosystem that the Creator has assigned to you to tend and keep and shape into a garden of beauty, fruitfulness, and shalom? What do you fear more than you love the Creator and his creation and his plan? The secret wisdom that's encoded in the timeless stories of parts of Vayishlach tell you that the answers to all the questions I just asked, all those critical questions of who you are and why you're here and what you're going to have to overcome and get over, depend on just how awake your neshama is and how influential you're allowing your neshama to be in comparison to your flesh and your nefesh, your mind, your will, and your emotions. If your mind, your will, and your emotions, or your fleshly urges and appetites and hormones are driving you more than your neshama, then you will not be able to answer the questions. It will be too hard for you to answer the questions. But if your neshama is awake, and it is taking its rightful position at the head of your flesh and at the head of your nefesh, then the questions will come easy to you. Well, the litmus test of how awake your neshama is the fear factor. Listen to me, beloved. Oh, dear friends, this is a secret wisdom of the Torah studies. If you want to know how awake your neshama is, how close you are to the potential the Holy One has given to you, assigned to you, then you look at who you fear, what you fear, and how greatly you fear. The litmus test of your awakeness, of your awakening to the neshama, and your closeness to your destiny is the fear factor. How much fear, how much anxiety do you have regarding men, other human beings? How much fear, anxiety do you have regarding animals, snakes, serpents, lions and tigers and bears? Oh my. How much fear, how much anxiety do you have regarding climate-related events, earthquakes and storms and tornadoes and hurricanes and volcanoes and climate change issues? How much fear do you have? How much intimidation and anxiety do you have over those things? How much fear, how much anxiety do you have over war and over pestilence, sicknesses and diseases and pandemics and famines and lack? How much fear do you have? The fear factor determines. It is your litmus test to tell you how awake your neshama is vis-a-vis your flesh and vis-a-vis your nefesh. Because you see, if your flesh is awake, and that's what's ruling you, and your nefesh, your mind, will, and emotions are ruling you, either one of those is ruling you, and your neshama is taking a back seat, you will be very, very afraid. You'll be afraid of men like Esau and his 400-man army that will confront. You'll be afraid of Shechem, the prince of the Canaanite city between the Mount Aval and Mount Gerizim. You'll be afraid of the rejection of men, even your own children and your own family life. You'll be afraid of everything. And you'll be afraid of what people and things and situations can do to you and your mortal body and your mind. Well, the Torah has a message for you. Are you ready? The Torah is saying to you, Lo tira, fear not. In the upper level of Mashiach ben David, or Mashiach ben Yosef for that matter, the words are rephrased a little bit slightly. To come Follow me. We're going somewhere. Lo tira, fear not. Come and just follow me. That's Mashiach at the highest level. You see, lo tira, or fear not, is not some cruel king's impossible command. It is a kind mentor's offer of and calling into empowerment, the empowerment of the light, the empowerment of the joyful sound of the teruah. So lo tira, my beloved, fear not, arrogant and presumptuous men. Lo tira, fear not, armies and their swords and their guns and their missiles and their drones. Lo tira, fear not losing things or even people that are precious to you. Lo tira, fear not exposure and vulnerability and rejection and humiliation. Lo tira, fear not pain and suffering and death. Lo tira, fear not losing respect, losing command, losing control. Fear not. You see, now, listen to me, beloved, now is activation time. It's go time and inaction. And fear, trembling in fear, is not an option. Bring it into current time. Last week in Vayishlach, the 7th parsha of Torah, we were introduced to Yaakov's experiences in prolonged exile. 20 years in Haran, in the house of horrors of Lavan the Aramean. And boy, did we get that Eastern kingdom power, control mindset, deception, lies, mysticism, all things were imposed, we were bombarded with it. So we were introduced in last week's parsha to the disciplines of prolonged exile, something we will all have to experience, or our children will. And during that parsha, we were taught important lessons. The secret wisdom encoded in those stories was that we had to learn how to tune out other voices. Voices of the cultures that we live in, voices of the entertainment industry, the sports industry, the media industry, voices of the gymnasium, voices of the university, the scientific world, the medical world. Tune out the other voices that bombard us when you're in captivity to them, when you're in prolonged exile. Tune out those other voices and stay focused on the mission, the calling, the assignment, the persona and the plan of the Creator. Learn to shema His voice and His alone, and tune out the other voices. And then as we shema His voice, learn how to improvise, adapt, and overcome according to His plan. That was last week in Vayetzi. We're moving on. This week we go a step higher in Yaakov's life. And this transition to Israel will come about through return and recentering protocols. So from the disciplines of prolonged exile, we go to the return, recentering protocols of Yaakov's higher life that takes him into Israel's identity. This parsha will be about facing the strong man of the world, the strong man particularly for Yaakov of Seir, the armies of Edom, the wrath of his brother Esau. These lessons, the lessons of elevating, the lessons of rising up above those things and transcending into the higher level of neshama-controlled life, will be lessons in denial of and death to self. Self in the sense of the flesh. Self in the sense of the pseudo-intellect and the mind and the will and the emotions that are independent from the Creator. Self, death to those things, denial of those things, and then death to those things will be the protocols of recentering and return, transforming from a Yaakov personality into a Yisrael personality. See, our divine mentor, the great storyteller, the great creator of the universe, wants all of his covenant partners and earth courtiers to recognize and manage certain things that are existing on the earth. There are 5 basic areas of negativity that we're here to counterbalance and to offset and to bring the light into. And those 5 areas are Ra, King James translation, evil; Shakat, King James translation, corruption; Hamas, King James translation, violence, cruelty, oppression; Ivelet, Ivelet probably is the better pronunciation. King James translation, folly. And Hevel, King James translation, vanity. These perversions are things that we will encounter in others, and we will recognize them because we have discovered them within ourselves first. There is nothing, no ra shakat hamas, no folly, no vanity, no perversion that we see in others that is not somewhere in ourselves. Hopefully dormant, hopefully being controlled, being managed, hopefully being subordinated and submitted to the Creator's plan, but nevertheless, there by virtue of our humanity in the flesh and humanity in the pseudo-intellect, the nephesh. So don't be surprised at, and don't be repulsed by the intense interpersonal drama scenes that Torah's author has assigned for us to read and deal with this week in Parshat Vayishlach. Gird up your loins, take a deep breath. Let's lift our voices and sing the Baraku blessing together, and then let us read Psalm 119, 18 through 19 aloud, and then we can plunge right in. The call to worship is the Baraku, the blessing before reading from the Torah. Sing along with me if you know it. Otherwise, just close your eyes if you can and let this Hebrew phrasing float over you and permeate and awaken your spirit. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Amen. And now, may you open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. We are just strangers here in the earth, so do not hide your instructions from us. So gather round, children of the Most High, sons of the living God. It's story time again, and the great storyteller has things for us to learn today. This is the season for that. This is Zeman Ha'adut Levot. Zeman Ha'adut Lavot. This is the season for the testimonies of the patriarchs, of the Avot, of the fathers of our walk. And before we are given any tasks to perform, any assignments to do, before we're giving mitzvot or commandments, or mishpatim or judgments, or hukot or regulations, or kingdom advancement assignments of any kind, we're to begin with learning and embracing our identity and our calling and our mission. Relationship is more important than direction. And so the direction has to come out of this strong relationship. So before we learn and are given tasks and what we're to do on the earth, practically, we are to learn who we are from an identity standpoint, who we are from a calling standpoint, and who we are from a mission standpoint. Who we are not, whose we are, and who we do not belong to and must not belong to, and be intimidated by, and why we are here and why we are not here. Reading the stories of the patriarchs is like getting into the inner workings of the mind of the Creator. You can begin to see as you read these stories and study these stories and meditate on these stories that he tells us, you can begin to see the vision he has, that he is crafting a strategic counterbalance to the nations that rage and the peoples that imagine a vain thing. He is building a great nation that will have and illustrate a more excellent way. He is paving the way for Mashiach ben Yosef, who will pave the way for Mashiach ben David. And as Adam was formed and shaped in the beginnings to tend and keep the garden and to oversee the initial startup of the creation ecosystem, so the seed of Avram, of Yitzhak, and of Yaakov is being formed and shaped to keep the raging of the competing nations and ideologies and philosophies and cultures and ethnicities of the world from destroying one another and the ecosystem. The Holy One wants us to offset the curses that mankind has unleashed and will unleash upon one another and upon our ecosystem, and to do so by its counterbalance of cursing, which is blessing. The Rambam, one of the most important sages of Israel, has made a statement that has been repeated many times, and I'll repeat it again today. Ma'aseh avot siman labanim. The experiences of the patriarchs, of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, that is, provide the choreography or script for everything that is going to be experienced or will ever be experienced by their descendants. What the fathers, what the patriarchs experienced, and what we read about in the Torah, especially in the book of Genesis, and then in the book of Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, what we read about in these areas has prophetic import. It establishes patterns and provides the templates or the script for what everything that's going to happen. It gives the story of humanity upon the earth, and its devolution and then its rebirth. It tells, as things are happening, it tells us what will happen to the people of Israel and the nations throughout the course of human history. So what are some of the great lessons we've learned from the patriarchal narratives so far, from these great stories that the Holy One's been telling us about our ancestors? Well, the stories of Avraham Avinu, of Abraham our father, teach us that there are secrets and disciplines to interacting with the Creator. This is the most important thing we can do, is learn how to interact with and relate to our Creator. And do that to grow in the sense of grace, of chen, of favor with Him and with man. And to cultivate emunah, or this trust relationship, the sense of we're carrying a life force, and that's more important than anything else we do, and is worth everything we might endure. The Avraham Avinu stories teach us these secrets and disciplines of interaction with the Creator and our purpose to be here. And then we get to Yitzhak, Isaac, as he's known in the Western world through the King James translations. Yitzhak Avinu, our father Yitzhak, teaches us the secrets and the disciplines of selflessness, submission to the divine will, meditative prayer, love of the unlovable, patience in the face of struggles and temptations and trials, and even sickness and blindness in his case, forbearance of anger, forbearance of wrath, and covenant steadfastness, even whenever it looks like there's no hope. What will Yaakov Avinu teach us? What will Yisrael, as he's transformed, teach us? Well, that's who's presently in this great storyteller spotlight. Yaakov, soon to be known as Yisrael. And this is the section of the Torah and the great stories in which Yaakov encounters, confronts, and ultimately transcends his greatest fear, which is, as we said, the vengeance, lust, hatred, and anger and wrath of his brother Esau. It's going to be a darkness versus light struggle in many different realms. And this struggle is going to help Yaakov take on the new calling, the new identity of Israel. So let's begin the story. After 20 long years of indentured servitude to Lavan, Yaakov Avinu is finally free. Don't celebrate too fast. But he is going home. He showed up in Padan Aram 20 years ago with nothing but his shepherd's staff and his father's blessing. But he is leaving. Oh, look at this. He's leaving with a beautiful bouquet of souls. Seeds of the covenant sown have resulted in a plenteous harvest gathered. So now Yaakov is not going out alone. Traveling beside him on the road back to the promised land are two matriarchs, Rachel and Leah, their servant Zilpah and Bilhah, 12 children, 11 sons and a daughter, and another child on the way in Rachel's womb, and an abundance of flocks and herds of sheep and goats and oxen and camels and donkeys. Yes, Yaakov is not coming out empty-handed. Yaakov is bringing forth his sheaves, rejoicing. Yaakov has survived and overcome and transcended the slick deception and the bitter rage of Lavan. For His Majesty's special forces, however, one challenge always leads to another, an even more difficult challenge. And that's going to be the case for Yaakov, and it will be the case for each of us. See, this is His Majesty's Special Forces training program that we're engaged in here. This is the walking in the light. And this is how discipline comes. This is how growth and maturation occur through these increasingly difficult levels of challenge for the training program. This is how humility begins to set in. How emunah, true trust, and walking with prioritization and purpose displace pride and opinion and ideology and fleshly desire and ideological and philosophical and religious conviction. This is how truth begins to out and come out in us. These difficult challenges stacked upon one another. This training program is how wisdom and understanding take root, and it is how the kingdom of heaven advances. Well, back to Yaakov. Yaakov's prospect of returning to his father and to his father's house has caused his neshama, his spirit, God-breathed spirit, to awaken again, like it did with the great vision of the staircase that leads between the seen and the unseen realm. So not since that staircase revelation download of Luz or Bet El that happened 20 years ago, as Yaakov's vision extended the way it does now, beyond the veil into the unseen realm. At the end of last week's Parsha, we read in Genesis 32, 1 through 2, V'Yaakov halach ledarchu. So Yaakov went on his way out of Laban's house, away from the confrontation he had with Laban at Gilead. And Malkei Elohim, the angelic messengers of the Holy One, met him. And when Yaakov saw them, he declared, Machaneh Elohim zeh, this is God's camp. And he called the name of that place Machanaim. Now this is the last words that we read in Parsha Vayetze, and that's the tone and gives us the information we need for all of Parsha Vayishlach. If you don't understand this vision that he has, this awakened neshama vision of the between the veil transformation between the two camps, the God's Holy One's camp, Creator's camp in the unseen realm, and human camp underneath it, aligned with it on the earth, and the connection between the two, then nothing you will read makes sense. It will drive you crazy to read the stories unless you understand that there is a connection, and Yaakov has seen and is embracing the connection between the upper realm, the heavenly realm, and the king's courts there, and the camp of the heavens, and the kingdom on earth in his own camp, in his own life, in his own mind and heart. So, this is our time. One obstacle stands squarely in Yaakov's way as he begins his trek back home. The fear-intimidation factor. Particularly the fear-intimidation factor that was associated with Yaakov's brother Esav's wrath. And with that wrath, it was not just the wrath of Esau he feared. It was his own sense of guilt and shame for the role he played in bringing that wrath to its boiling point. He had not trusted the words of the Holy One. He had tried to make it happen himself, take control. His mother had encouraged him because that was her way, the Lavanian, the Haranian, the Padanaraimian, the Eastern mentality way of controlling everything, making things happen in the flesh that are designed to happen from the spirit to the flesh, first in the spiritual, then in the natural. Note, it is now late spring. As the story we're about to read unfolds, it's late spring. It was the sheep shearing time. You remember in Haran before he left? Sheep are sheared in the early spring. So now we're in the late spring, flowing into the summer. The Jordan is at its flood stage. Yaakov and his little entourage of sheaves coming back with a harvest toward the promised land is staying on the east side of the Jordan in the Transjordan region. Crossing the Jordan at flood stage, which is this time of the year, would be difficult for the young ones, the young members of the flock and herd, the young children, the wives, the pregnant Rachel. It would be dangerous and difficult. So he's staying on the east side of the Jordan River, coming southward. He's waiting for the right time for the river to go down, the water levels to drop, so he can turn west and cross the Jordan into the promised land. But he knows it's not yet. It's too soon. So he's continuing southward for the time being. But southward is a problem because southward is directly into the teeth of the kingdom of Seir, the place where Esau rules as a monarch, as a despot, as the king that he is. So as he continues southward, every day he gets closer and closer to Seir and to Esau. He hopes to turn west, cross the Jordan, and avoid the confrontation. But let's see how the story unfolds. Genesis 32, verses 3 through 5. Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav et Esav achiv, and Yaakov sent messengers from his presence and face to his brother Esav. Arza Seir Sadeh Edom, in the land of Seir, in the field of Edom. Vaitzav otam lemor, and he charged them to say, the messengers that is, to say, Ko tomrum la Adonai la Esav, for me, on my behalf, you are to speak to my Lord, to Esav, Ko amar avdeka Yaakov, for on behalf of your servant Yaakov, I speak. Im Lavan garti ve'achar ad ata. I was sojourning. I've been sojourning with Lavan, and I've been prevented from coming to you until now. V'yehi li shor v'chamor son v'eved v'shivka, and I've come with donkeys and oxen and flocks and male and female servants. V'eshlakta l'chagid Adonai, and I have sent to tell the Lord my story. Lipsoken be'eneka, in order that I could find grace and goodwill and favor in your eyes. Speaking to Esau, the messengers were. But then the messengers returned to Yaakov, and they said, we went out as we were sent. We went out to your brother Esau, and behold, he is coming to meet you, to confront you, to oppose you, to withstand you. He is coming to you with 400 men who are with him. Then the 400 is a word that means to tread down, to press down, at least in gematria, to an oppressive force of 400 men. So that's where we start our story, and the story will continue from there. The mission and report of the messengers is where we started, but then we get into what Yaakov was going to do. Yaakov is going to face this challenge, and he's going to try, first of all, to face it in the flesh. He's going to divide the camp into sections, his own camp. And he's going to prioritize that which cannot be prioritized, all of which are essential. Prioritize the children. Which ones do we want to make sure he saves? Which ones is he willing to part with or to have Esau kill? Which ones of his flocks are the most important? Which animals? Which people? What stuff? What blessings that he's worked so hard for over 20 years of captivity in Laban's house. How will he divide these things up and prioritize? Oh, the craving, the hurting, the pain of the soul. And then he's going to actually begin to take another approach. After this physical control management approach of dividing the camp into priorities, he's going to go another route. He's going to approach the Holy One. He's now got a covenant relationship with the Creator of the universe. His neshama is awake, and so he's going to model this thing that we call tefillah. Prayer is the common English translation through the King James translators. Tefillah, though, it means to lay aside, to shed, to cast off all that hinders, and realign with the will of the Holy One. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to model tefillah. We're going to have this beautiful model of tefillah for us in chapter 32, verses 9 through 12. And then after he finishes his prayer, you don't really finish a prayer like that. You just surrender. And after he comes to the point of surrender, he sends a series of 5 species droves of a gift of restitution to his brother. His brother wanted the blessing, and the blessing was all material at that time. And the blessing they got, and Yaakov was giving him these things, these blessings that he seemingly deprived him of back at the time of the blessing narrative. And then after he gives these 5 specific droves, 550 gift animals as a mincha, as a atoning, as a favor currying offering, he engages in a night of intense struggle. He takes all of his wives, Rachel and Leah, he takes Zilpah and Bilhah, he takes the 12 children, he takes all the stuff, everything he's got left, and he takes across the river Yabok, not the river Jordan, the stream of Yabok, and he goes back and stays on the north side of the Yabok by himself, waiting because his neshama tells him something is coming. And there's when we have this great struggle, the wrestling match that's so famous between Yaakov and someone, and that someone in the dark that he does not identify, does not give us a name, and Torah does not feel it's important for us to know. That individual wrestles with him until the breaking of the new, the breaking forth of the new, breaking of the day, it says in the King James translation into English. Then that sets the stage for the long dreaded confrontation with Esau himself. The next day, the next morning, the actual confrontation takes place, chapter 33, verses 1 through 36, and then we have the experience. And what we find is a miracle has taken place, and the Holy One, the Creator of the universe, has turned the heart of this raging king to mush, as it were. And he has Esau, when he sees Yaakov bowing before him, 7 times he bows before him, and he's walking with a limp because he has been in this struggle with this being all night long. And so he sees Yaakov, and instead of rushing with swords drawn, spears aloft, waiting to destroy him and his little band of pilgrims, he runs and embraces him and hugs him and kisses him and weeps with him on the plain. A miracle has just happened. And then we find that the two go their separate ways, and then Yaakov finally finds a place to cross the Jordan. He crosses the Jordan. He sets up a camp. He's still limping. He's still hurting from the struggle he engaged in. Probably still a little bit overwhelmed by the confrontation and the miracle that's just taken place. And so he sets up camp. He builds a little crude house for him and his family. Perhaps Rachel's having trouble with the journey. They rest up at Sukkot, and we're going to learn about that name, and we're going to encounter that again. Sukkot there. Sukkot when we come out of Egypt. Sukkot once a year. Divine calendaring issues when we periodically realign with the will. And this is where he's going to Sukkot, spends a few days there and rests up. But then he moves on, and he goes toward the high country. It's so hot now. Summer has set in the Jordan Rift Valley, and it is super hot down in that lowest part of the earth. And so the heat gets so high that he decides to go up into the mountains and catch the road going south through the mountains. It goes the road that leads from the north down through Shechem, all the way then to Bet-El, then to Yerushalayim, then to Bethlehem, and then on to Hebron. And then this road is an ancient road that goes to the mountains. He goes to that path. So he goes to Shechem, and you would think he would be in a hurry to go on, but he isn't apparently. He stops at Shechem, and he buys a piece of property and a well, the well of Sychar that we're going to read about later in the stories written by Yohanan, known as John in the King James translation. And we're going to read about this woman that came to that well and the water of that well. And so we're going to learn that later. This same well will play a major part in the story of Yosef and the Yosephian Mashiach illustrations later. But he goes to Shechem, and it's not well. Perhaps it was not a good choice. Why did he make the choice? But he made the choice to stay there and associate closely with these Canaani of Shechem. And of course, Dinah, the little daughter, goes forth to go play with some of the little girls. She's just 9 or 10 probably years old. She goes out into the city. He walks from the camp into the town, and bad things happen. Shechem, the prince of the place, arrogantly takes her, abuses her, traffics her, in ways that are unthinkable and unspeakable. The son, now you have to decide what you're going to do with this. You can't undo it. You can't fix it. So Yaakov is learning covenant disciplines and covenant ways. And so he's willing to negotiate, to discuss, to try to plot a path forward for the group. But his sons are not mature. They're not understanding they have to deal with things as they are, not believe they can somehow fix things that they can't fix and take control. They are still operating in the Eastern mindset of control and management and manipulation. So they take things in their own hands and they kill all the people of Shechem, including its prince and his father, the king. And it makes the name of Israel a stench in the land. It makes the people of the covenant someone to be hated, to be disgusted at, and boy, that we've had consequences of that all the way to today. And so the Holy One calls Yaakov to go to Beit El, go back to the place where he had the staircase vision. Go back. Renew the awakening of the neshama at its fullest point. Take his sons back there. Take his wives back there. Take these fruits of his labor during the 20 years of captivity back there. Take Rachel back there and have him put aside all the ornaments and all the idols and all the things of the raging nations and the vain imagination obsessed people they have embraced as their own and made part of their identity. Put them aside and have a fresh experience of surrender to the Holy One. They go back to Beit El. The Holy One speaks to Yaakov, that is, the model of teshuvah, of turning back to the Holy One, more so than just turning away from your sin, is presented to us. Then we have more experiences of Yaakov as he goes back. The death and burial of Devorah, his nursemaid, Rebekah's nurse. The commissioning of Israel, or as another visitation where the Holy One gives him this name officially after the Ish that he had wrestled with, told him he was not going to be named Israel. Gets the name Israel. And then they go to Bethlehem. They make the journey southward, and all along the journey they come to Bethlehem, and that's where Rachel goes into labor. And she begins to have the pains, and she begins to have the contractions, and she begins to scream in agony, and the birth comes slowly, and the birth comes of Benjamin, but she names him Benoni, the son of my suffering, the son of my pain. And Yaakov will not have it, so he names the child instead Benjamin, the son of my right hand, the son of my strength. But Rachel dies there at Bethlehem, and she is buried in a separate tomb, not the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs, not where Avram and Sarah, not where Yitzhak will be buried, not where Rivka is already buried. She will be buried in a separate tomb, Rachel's tomb in Bethlehem. And then we go to another place as we're going south, the Tower of Edar. And there, in the midst of the trauma and the tragedy, another tragedy strikes. Reuven, the oldest son, will declare his independence and actually do a dastardly deed of rebellion toward his father in regard to one of his father's handmaidens, and declaring that he is the rightful leader of the group now. And Yaakov will not say a word about it at this time. Yaakov is learning these disciplines of covenant maturity, and yet he still rules the household with shalom. And finally, we get to Hebron, and at Hebron, finally we're back there, and the death and burial of Yitzhak takes place. Yitzhak is buried with his mother, with Yaakov's mother, and then with Sarah and Avram. And that is accomplished by Esav and Yaakov together. And the Parsha ends then with the generations, the Toledot, the great story of the developing kingdom of the counterbalance of Esav, Edom, the nation of Edom, and also of Amalek, who we will see many times again, and who become the head of the Esavian conglomerate or triumvirate, And we will see that this great nation of evil, or great nation of Rosh, Akkad, and Hamas, will be personified by Amalek and his seed descendants. So we'll see this counterbalance being set forth, the Rosh, Akkad, and Hamas, folly and vanity, perversions of the world being set up, and how we're supposed to become a mature, wise, patient, forbearing, faithful witness of the more excellent way, preparing the way for Mashiach ben Yosef, who is coming soon, and Mashiach ben David, who will follow in proper and immediate time. Well, beloved, my time allotted to spend with you on this Sabbath morning is coming closely to an end. And so I thank you for listening and tuning in. I pray that you have indeed felt the emanation of the light as we had these little conversations together. And I pray that as we leave, you will be able to be stirred to go back and read these things and study these things, meditate upon these things and these secret wisdom encodings that are in these timeless stories of Torah. You're always invited to subscribe to the YouTube website or YouTube site, YouTube page, Bill Bullock, Rabbi's son, and to like the message today if you would. However you do it, leave a message, let us know who you are and where you're listening from, and any comments or questions you might have that we could discuss. I look forward to seeing you next week on the next Sabbath, the next installment in the Walking in the Light series, and discovering the secret wisdom encoded within Torah's timeless stories. Well, for now, Shabbat Shalom.